looking at hymns, the people's song, in the movies, and how Hollywood's made use of that. John Tabner, a contemporary classical composer, says that he believes the museum is the new cathedral of the 21st century, a place where you're lost in great art and reach the divine that way. I have a friend who thinks it's the movies, because you go in and it's dark. You've already witnessed how much Dr. Lindvall loves the dark. And you have this big light, so you're drawn to the light. I'm not so sure about that. But what I am sure about is that by the time you finish this 50 minutes, you will know all sorts of things that you did not know before. Your mind will be expanded, and that's why we're here. So, join me in welcoming C.S. Lewis Professor of Communication and Christian Thought, Dr. Terry.
I have been dealing with several projects looking at prayer and films, how they're used, and also hymns. Hymns are pervasive in movies. I don't know how many of you saw the Coen Brothers' True Grit. Anyone see Coen Brothers' True Grit? Do you remember how it starts? Do you remember the music that Carson Burwell uses? He uses an old hymn called Leaning on the Everlasting Arms of Jesus. What happens to Maddie in the film? She loses her arm. She no longer has an arm. And so what I'm going to argue today is that hymns are placed and embedded in films intentionally. They are there, and sometimes we don't even realize why they are there. But they are there to move the narrative along. They're there to engage us. They're there to take older viewers and resonate. Thank you for coming in. That's good. Let's all welcome her. As we go along. In the King's Speech, there's the stammering king, George VI. And he is told that at his coronation at Westminster Abbey, that they would sing a hymn, I was glad when they said to come into the house of the Lord. But he is told, except you won't be glad, because they sing for a very long time. This may feel like we're going on for a very long time with hymns. But I'm going to take you through a variety of hymns and show you how they have been treated differently in films. We're going to look and see how they have become significant, how they often change the character. Now in 1960, certain things were happening in our culture, right when people were thinking about establishing Virginia Wesleyan. The mainline churches, the Methodists, the Episcopals, and a few of the Presbyterians were losing their faith. They were becoming liberal. This is the God is Dead movement of the later 60s. But what they were doing is putting their action into social action. The film Elmer Gantry is about a traveling salesman who decides to become an evangelist. This is also the time, remember, of Billy Graham coming to the forefront. And all these new evangelists. Televangelists will come within a decade of this time. And so there's this kind of trickery and con man aspect. But the one authentic moment is when he comes into this church and begins to recognize the power of God in a community that is truly worshiping. This is the whole story too. He's on his way towards the Canaan land, towards the promised land. Of the civil rights movement, the suspicion between races.
But I'm on my way, and a mighty hard time. But way. It's a mighty hard climb, but I'm on my way. On my way, glory, hallelujah, I'm on my way. On the way, that Satan lies awaiting, every night and day. Satan lies awaiting, every shout he say, get behind me, Satan, behind me, Satan. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, I'm on my way. Fight the devil and pray, take another step higher, higher, higher. The devil is red, oh, another step higher, higher, higher. Chase the devil away, but all the cotton is fire. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah, I'm on my way.
As you know, the civil rights movement began in the churches. And the churches were a source of strength and inspiration in their worship. We'll see it a little later on as well. But what happens here is that Burt Lancaster, coming in as Elmer Gantry in Sinclair Lewis's great satire, finds that there's something real and genuine in this worship. He'll move on, however, to go into more corrupt versions.